Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nandapriya Narmada Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. This is Vinita Gandharvika Devidasi from Texas.
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, please accept humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nandapriya Narmada Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, and to all the assembled devotees. This is Megha from Naperville. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Megha Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, please accept humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Shri Guru and Gauranga and all the assembled devotees. Yashamati from Chicago.
Hare Krishna, Yashamati Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, please accept humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nandapriya Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. This is Aditi Devi Dasi in India, Pune.
Hare Krishna, Aditi Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, please accept humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nandapriya Narmada Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all the assembled devotees. This is Indulekha Karna Devi Dasi from Lincoln.
Hare Krishna, Indulekha Karna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, please accept humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nandapriya Narmada Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all the assembled devotees on the call. This is Harita from Missouri City, Texas. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Harita Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, please accept humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Please give my humble obeisances to you, all the devotees here present. All glories to Guru Maharajas and Srila Prabhupada. This is Eka Radhika Leela Devidasi from Iowa.
Hare Krishna, Eka Radhika Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, please accept humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you very much, Mataji, for joining the call. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Are there any other devotees who would like to introduce? Hare Krishna. Welcome to Bhakti Sangha conference call. Today we are very fortunate to have His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu on the call to enlighten us on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam 6th Canto, 16th chapter, 36th sloka. Before handing over the call to Prabhuji, I would like to ask Aditi Mataji to give a brief introduction about Prabhuji. Mataji, please take it.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. This is a brief introduction for His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji. His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji, a disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj, is a monk, mentor and spiritual author, an electronics and communication engineering graduate. He worked as a software engineer in a prominent multinational software corporate, seeing the prevalent problems of stress, depression, addiction, and overall misdirection, all due to lack of spirituality. He felt inspired to dedicate his life to the cause of sharing the spiritual wisdom of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhuji is the author of the world's only Gita daily feature, wherein he writes daily 300 words inspirational reflection on a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. As of now, he has written over 1,700 Gita meditations that are posted on www.gitadaily.com. He also answers questions by seekers on his site, www.thespiritualscientist.com, where his over 3,500 audio answers and several hundred articles are available. He travels all over the world from Australia to America, giving talks on spiritual subjects in universities such as Princeton and Cambridge and companies such as Intel and Microsoft. Over to you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you for the introduction. I think Prabhuji is not yet on the call, right?
Shall we read the verse, Mataji?
Yeah. Sure. Please.
Yes, Mataji, Prabhuji asked us to read the verse.
Okay, one second. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 16, text number 36. Paramanu Parama Mahatos Tvam Adya Antantara Varti Traya Vidhura Adhava Ante Apicha Sattvanam Yadruvam Tad Evantara Lepi. So sorry for that. I didn't know the meter to read this in. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. You exist in the beginning, middle, and end of everything. From the most minute particle of the cosmic manifestation, the atom, to the gigantic universes and total material energy. Nonetheless, you are eternal, having no beginning, end, or middle. You are perceived to exist in these three phases, and thus you are permanent. When the cosmic manifestation does not exist, you exist as the original potency. Okay. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Brahma Samhita 533 says, Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayavvanam Cha Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhaktau Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, Krishna, who is the original person, absolute, infallible, without beginning. Although expanded into unlimited forms, still the same original, the oldest, and the person always appearing as a fresh youth. Such eternal, blissful, all-knowing forms of the Lord cannot be understood even by the best Vedic scholars. But they are always manifest to pure, unalloyed devotees. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no cause, for He is the cause of everything. The Lord is beyond the working of cause and effect. He is eternally existing. In another verse, the Brahma Samhita says, Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam. The Lord exists within the gigantic universe and within the atom. The descent of the Lord into the atom and the universe indicates that without His presence, nothing could factually exist. Scientists say that water is a combination of hydrogen and oxygen, but when they see a vast ocean, they are puzzled about where such a quantity of hydrogen and oxygen could have come from. They think that everything evolved from chemicals, but where did the chemicals come from? That they do not know. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes, He can produce immense quantities of chemicals to create a situation for chemical evolution. We actually see that chemicals are produced from living entities. For example, a lemon tree produces many tons of citric acid. The citric acid is not the cause of the tree. Rather, the tree is the cause of the acid. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of everything. He is the cause of the tree that produces the citric acid. Bija mam sarva bhutanam. Devotees can see that the original potencies causing the cosmic manifestation are not in chemicals, but in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for He is the cause of the chemicals. Okay, Hare Krishna. Anybody would like to read the second paragraph? It is a long purport. I was not sure if somebody else would.
With Mataji.
Go ahead, Mataji.
Everything is caused or manifested by the energy of the Supreme Lord. And when everything is annihilated or dissolved, the original potency enters the body of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, this verse says, Ante picha Satvanam Jad Dhruvam Tat Evantarale Pi. The word Dhruvam means permanent. The permanent reality is Krishna, not this cosmic manifestation. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Ahamadir hi Devanam Anmataha Sarvam Pravartate. Krishna is the original cause of everything. Arjuna recognized Lord Sri Krishna as the original person. Purusham Sharvatham Divyam Adi Devan Aham Bivum. And the Brahma Samhita describes him as the original person, Govindam Adi Purusham. He is the cause of all causes, whether at the beginning, at the end, or in the middle. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji, Sindhulika Karuna Mataji, and Leela Mataji for reading so blissfully. Thank you so much. Mataji, what should we do?
I still don't see Prabhuji, Mataji. We can. Would anybody like to sing a bhajan until Prabhuji comes?
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, am I audible to you?
Yes.
Yes,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna, am I audible?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. Sorry for the read. Is the translation purport done?
Yes, Prabhuji, we read the translation and purport. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Swagatam, Swagatam, Prabhu, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, Hare Krishna, Swagatam.
Hare Krishna, yes, just a minute.
Please accept our humble obeisances, Prabhuji. Humble obeisances, Srila Prabhupada.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for giving your very valuable time and association to us this morning. Yeah, please go ahead, Prabhuji. Take over the call. Hare Krishna.
Is there another device, Prabhuji?
Yeah, disconnecting that.
Okay.
Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanishalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarini Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhatta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. And here we are discussing one of the foundational philosophical conceptions of spirituality. And that the fundamental conception is okay, so I have joined through the tablet. Can you just help me to share the screen? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, so, okay, thank you. So in this particular section, the theme that being discussed is the understanding the nature of God. That here it is described how the Supreme Lord exists in the beginning, middle, and end of everything. That so the scope of God, the nature of God, the nature of the ultimate reality is the topic of discussion over here. So I will use an acronym DEAL to discuss with this topic. And broadly, we will discuss the nature of God as an answer to a common question about God. So this question is, if God created everything, then who created God? Where did God come from? Who created God? So in this particular verse, it is described how the Supreme Lord exists beyond the three phases of time. And that is the theme let's start with. So whenever people ask this question, who created God? We need to start with definition, not with depiction. What that means is that depiction is how something is visualized, is imagined. So whenever people have the idea, okay, who created God? So they have a particular image in mind. Now, when they have the image, image could be like a deity. For them, it's just idol. Or it could be some character in a story, even if that is not put in a image form, like idol form, a deity form. So whatever it is, when people start with depiction, they think, okay. So once an atheist was asked that, he is a prominent evolutionist. He was asked, who created? Do you think God created the universe? He said, no, definitely not. He said, why not? He said, the universe is too grand to be created by a tiny God. It is a peculiar logic. And he says, God is too tiny. God is too sectarian. God is too insignificant to have created such a great universe. When somebody says like this universe is too grand to be having created by any God. What he's saying is, essentially saying, he's starting with a depiction. And now he was responding primarily to Christianity. And his idea was that there's a Christian God who sends pestilence to the enemies of God. the Christian God who sometimes does this and does that. That's the Old Testament God primarily. And he started with that. He says that God is too puny. We have created such a grand universe. So most people, when they say, okay, who created God? Okay, they have to start with, okay, what is your conception of God? There are generally, when we are answering a question, or rather, let's put it not this way, when we are dealing with a question, there are broadly two ways to deal with the question. One is the straightforward way, that is, answer the question. And this is what most of us would try to do. And this is useful and valid on most occasions. But there are times when we have to take a completely different approach, and that is question the question. Question the question. So now sometimes some questions are designed to be trap questions. And at that time, the presumption that underlies the question, that itself has to be questioned. So a standard example for this is, if somebody is asked, have you stopped beating your wife? Now, this is clearly a trap question. If you say yes, hey, it means you are beating your wife. You admitted that. You confessed that. You say no, shameless God. You're still beating your wife. So here, can everyone be muted here, please? So here the response is question the question. So what is the basis of the allegation, the implied allegation that I was beating my wife? So similarly, when somebody asks, if God created everything, who created God? Then when we question the question, what is your conception of God? And that is where, okay, God is this, God is that, God is the being that people worship and the people worship. God is the being who is depicted on TV. God is the being we see in the temple. God is this, God is that. Many people have certain conceptions about God. And that is where we can bring in the definition. The definition is that he is the cause of all causes. This is the very definition of God. Now, sarva karana karanam, anadir adir govinda. Now, somebody may say that I don't accept this definition. Okay, that we can discuss that, and we will discuss that in due course. But the point is that even from the perspective of simple logic, the cause of all causes can't have a cause. This is just simple logic that arises from the definition. So this is the definition of God. And most people start with the depiction. And so in general, this is where there's like a tension between spirituality. Broadly has two aspects to it. One is philosophy, and the other is culture. Within the culture, the religion is there. So most people's questions, so this is the origin of questions. Whereas here is the source of answers. So most people, when they're asking this question, who created God? They are starting with, from the culture comes depiction. I said depiction can be an image in the temple, depiction can be a character in a sacred story, but it's a depiction. So from the philosophy comes definition. And that's why we need to shift the discussion to the philosophical level for the first. That means that we start with the idea that, okay, what is your conception of God? And the conception or the definition of God with which I am operating is this, that God is the cause of all causes. And once we have that point clear, that God is the cause of all causes, then asking who created God is asking what is the cause of all causes. So it's a ignorant question. It's an ignorant question because it's similar to the question, who made a circle circular? Well, nobody has to make a circle circular. The circle is by definition circular. So that is the very definition of a circle. So the definition of God is the cause of all causes. It's the cause of all causes. And therefore the question itself reflects that an unawareness of what we are talking about. So sometimes it can come off as arrogant, as presumptuous, that we say somebody, you don't know what you're talking about. But that is the clear case over here. Now, somebody may say that, okay, but I don't accept this definition of God. Well, okay. If that is the case, then we have to start every subject with some definitions. And so in science, the starting definitions are called as axioms. Now, you can call it as starting assumptions, definitions. Things may not be clearly defined in words, but they are called as axioms. The word specifically is used as axioms, but axioms are basically starting foundational truths with which we begin the discussion of any subject. And if those truths are not accepted, then that discussion cannot happen. And that is why it's vital that the definition be clearly understood. So for example, if we consider point is said to have 0 dimensions. It's a zero-dimensional point, zero-dimensional entity. Now line has 1 dimension. Now, and line is also said to be a set of points. So what we are having is 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 is leading to 1. Now, how is this possible? So an entity or a thing, an object with 0 dimensions, when a set of it is formed, we are getting 1. This is no, you cannot mix algebra and geometry. This is algebra, 0 plus 0 plus 0 will remain 0. But in geometry, a thing with 0 dimensions, it comes together, it leads to a thing with 1 dimensions. So each field has its own definitions. And to study that field, we need to accept the definitions of that field. So the idea is, don't mix subjects. Don't mix algebra and geometry. You have to understand algebra, you have to accept the axioms of algebra. To accept geometry, you have to accept the axioms of geometry. So every subject has its axioms. Now, when we say the axioms, the starting points, now what does this mean? You say, okay, but it doesn't make sense that everything should have a cause. Okay. God should also have a cause. Why should God be an exception to the rule? That brings us to the point of, that brings us to the second point. So E is, I'll simply use the word example over here. We could go more complications, say exemplification. Exemplification is the idea of a cause of all causes can be exemplified. So consider, say, a novel. Now within a novel, if we consider, say, the Harry Potter or the Star Wars series. Now in the Star Wars, there is, let's put, or you can say Harry Potter. If we consider a series like that, Now there is a central character. Maybe there is, so Harry Potter is a character, or we have Luke Skywalker, or whoever is the character. Now you could have the genealogy of that person. You could go backward and you could go forward. Okay. Who were his parents? Who were his grandparents? And like that, we can trace the genealogy backwards. And similarly, the characters are older and we have children. And we could trace children and grandchildren if the generations go on sufficiently. So now here, in one sense, what we are having is this cause leads to this effect. But then after that, the effect becomes the cause. And that cause leads to an effect. The parents give rise to children. The children become parents and they give rise to children. So like that, this goes backward, backward, backward. So in one sense, every cause is the effect of some other cause. So like that, if somebody has sufficient interest, they can study Harry Potter and can find out the genealogy of Harry Potter. But now, suppose somebody reads the Harry Potter series and they come to know that, okay, this has been written by an author, J.K. Rowling. Now the question comes, where is she in the book? In which generation is she? Well, the student can, the reader, the children who are reading this can read it back and forth, read every single series of the books, read all supplementary literature, but they won't find J.K. Rowling in that. Why is that? Because now, there are two things over here. He created the characters, he created the timeline, he created the plot, and yet he exists outside it all. So exists outside it all. So the point here is that even in our day-to-day experience, we understand that something can exist outside completely outside a domain, even if they are very closely connected with that domain. The entire Harry Potter series wouldn't exist without J.K. Rowling. So she has a very close connection with it. She's the creator. And yet, she's not to be found anywhere over there. So similarly, God, it is understood that God is the creator of the fabric of time and space. I'm using the word fabric specifically over here. Fabric, just like fabric is used to make a cloth. Now, you can have the most attractive clothes, but the designer is not to be found in the clothes. You could have some label over there, but any people can put fake labels. So the designer is not found in the clothes. So similarly, just as designer is not found in the clothes designed, similarly, the fabric of space and time is designed by God. So what this means is, we have the present, if we consider a timeline, similar to what we're discussing, there's the present, there is the past, and there is the future. And this is the entire timeline. So actually speaking, now what is the present now will become the past. What is the future will become the present. And in this way, we could say the present leads to the future. The future becomes the present, it leads to the future. So this is a similar dynamic, and yet God exists outside it all. So when we say God is the cause of all causes, so here you say, how does it make any sense? You've created a definition that somebody atheist may argue, you've created a definition by which you have exempted yourself from the burden of proof. No, that is not the point. The definition means all causes. God is the cause of all causes. So all causes, that means it includes time. Now, time is a cause. And time is a primary cause. Now, we may say that without time, nothing will happen. Of course, with time alone, things may not happen. Like, it is not that with time, the next generation is born. Man and woman have to come together. Male and female across species have to come together, unless there's unisexual reproduction. But there is an effort involved. So in the Bhagavad Gita 13:21, it is said that Karya Karana Kartrutve Hetuhu Prakritruchyate Purusha Sukha Dukkhanam Bhoktrutve Heturuchyate Purusha Prakritisthohi Bhunte Praktijan Gunan Karanam Guna Sangosya Sadasadyoni Janmasu. So 13:21 talks essentially about two domains. There's a domain of spirit and the domain of matter. And I'm drawing matter bigger because matter is what is visible to us. Spirit is not visible. But the key point here is that as things move in this time domain, they also move in the, here spirit is more in terms of experience. Because through consciousness we experience. So in the domain of matter, there is some change. There are things which are good, there are things which are bad, like that. And correspondingly, there are things that change in the domain of spirit. That is, the experience changes. So some things happen, they bring happiness. Some things happen, they cause distress. So here, in the domain of matter, there is what we could say construction, and destruction. And correspondingly, the domain, there can be happiness and distress. But the key point of this word, the next verse, this is 13:21. But after that, what the next verse states is that actually speaking, the God as the divine exists outside this domain. Upadrashta anumantacha bharta bhokta maheshwara Paramatmeti chapyukto dehesmin purushah paraha. It's paraha. So paraha means he's transcendental. Now there is a slight nuance over here. J.K. Rowling is not present at all in her books. Now God is present in the world as the Paramatma. And God manifests in the world also as avatar. But he is not produced by the world. He is not a product of the world. Just like in a movie, sometimes in a story, sometimes the director or the actor might feature. Occasionally they may make a cameo or something like that. But even when God is present in the world, sometimes God is, so sometimes is present in the world, but is never product of the world. God does not arise by the cause-effect mechanisms of this world. And that's why this very definition has to be understood clearly if we want to move forward to explore. Okay, how is God the cause of all causes? Well, everything has a definition. And the definition of all causes include the cause of time. And that brings us to the third point now. A is alternative. Okay, what are the alternatives available for us? Basically, if we consider the universe exists around us, everything that exists. Now, of course, somebody can be an extreme nihilist and say that nothing exists. And then that still raises the question, okay, then where does the illusion that something exists come from? But let's not go into that. At this stage, let's assume the scientific, most people who ask the question, who created God? They are scientific people. And science or rationality involves, to some extent, trusting sensory perception. Even science does not trust sensory perception as the ultimate authority on many occasions. They say quantum physics, there's very little that can be pursued through the senses, but it is accepted as one authority. So we can assume that the world exists. So now everything that exists, now where did it come from? We have basically only two options. So if we ask the question, where did it all come from? So among these two questions, there are, or among for this question, basically, there are only two answers. So everything that exists, it either came from something or it came from nothing. So now, what is it? Either it came from something or it came from nothing. So if somebody says that the cause of all causes, there's no such thing as a cause of all causes, then what are you exactly saying? That it did come from nothing? So that we have no experience of anything coming from nothing. In science, there is one of the fundamental principles is the conservation of energy. Energy can only be created or destroyed. Is that right? No, energy can never be created or destroyed. It can only be changed in form. So that means that its implication is that nothing comes from nothing. That not a thing will come. If there has not been a thing behind, not a thing will come from it. So why are we discussing this over here? That is it possible that this causal chain can keep going backward forever? Does it stop somewhere or does never stops anywhere? So now even science more or less agrees that it stops somewhere. That there are various theories about this. So for example, the theory that around of the current idea of the universe is there was a Big Bang. So there was a singularity. Now there are many, I'll start with the Big Bang theory and I'll move to other theories afterwards. But the idea is from the singularity, everything that exists came about. The timeline, while it was coming about, expanded. Now this is some variant of the Big Bang theory. There are many theories, but there's some variant of that that is propagated. Now the singularity, is that something or is that nothing? Now some scientists may say that actually the singularity exists before space and time. And basically the singularity, they try to put it as it is the secular replacement for God. So they are not rejecting God, they're simply replacing God. So secular, so before time and space, something existed of infinite energy, infinite mass, infinitesimal dimensions. And it exists beyond physical description and mathematical equations. It exists beyond mental conceptualization. It's just a singularity. In many ways, this is the definition of singularity, is the definition of God. So science also ends up accepting that there is some starting point. There was one atheist, he read how the universe came from nothing. He wrote a book about that. And essentially what he did was, his nothing was actually certainly something. He basically redefined nothing. So the nothing required complex quantum mechanic. It was a complex quantum mechanical vacuum that required pages upon pages of the most abstract triple integral calculus kind of stuff to be defined. to describe. So that nothing was certainly not nothing as it is commonly understood. So this is deceptive logic. It's like, I did not do anything. I did not do anything wrong. Well, I may say that when I'm accused of something, and I may have driven over some person. Suppose I have driven over some person, and no, he came in the road. Signal was green, and he came over. It is his mistake. Okay, but you did something. I did not do anything. Okay, maybe you're not legally culpable to say I did not do anything at all. No, you did something. Maybe it is right, it is wrong. That's a different question. To say that you did not do anything it's redefining the question. So sometimes redefining things is the atheistic way is like a cunning way to try to weasel means cunning, like a cunning way to get out of one's problems. When a former American president was accused of having a sexual affair with his secretary, he said, I did not touch her. Well, technically it was true because he did not touch her, she touched him. But according to him, most people's understanding of any sexual affair, it is the same. So sometimes when people just use word jugglery to try to get out, weasel their way out of the situation. So nothing can still be something. And it is something in this case. So we have only two options for the source of everything. Either everything came from something, everything came from nothing. We can say everything came from nothing can be ruled out immediately because we don't have any experience of anything coming from nothing. To say that everything in this universe has come from nothing, but then the universe itself came from nothing. It is spectacularly inconsistent logic. That is spectacularly inconsistent logic. So we can rule out nothing. Then when scientists, now again, I'm not criticizing scientists here, specifically atheistic scientists, those who claim that science has proven that God is no longer necessary or God is no longer existent. So nothing is not an option, now something. So now what is that something? That something, because I said quantum mechanical vacuum, okay, that's what to call a singularity. Now singularity, there are some atheistic scientists who are trying to come up with an explanation where they said that actually the universe is cyclic. So once you have a circle, where do you say there's a point? And so therefore the universe does not require an origin. So for example, they say there's a big bang, and before that there is a big crunch. Big crunch means what? So big bang means the universe is expanding. Big crunch means the universe is contracting. And then there is a big bang before that. And there is a big crunch. And like this, it keeps going on and on and on and on. And so this is a cyclic universe, perpetually cycling universe. Now, the only problem with this is that the scientists think that by this, they have done, again scientists, sorry, atheists think that by this, they have done a clever word jugglery and they have proven that there is no need for the universe to have any beginning. Well, yes and no. A circle does not have a starting point. In the sense that once the circle is drawn, it is endless. But the very existence of a circle requires the existence of a circle drawer outside the circle. So similarly, even if we say that there's a big bang, big crunch, big bang, big crunch, this is actually in many ways very similar to the Vedic understanding in principle, not in specifics. In principle, the universe Avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharata avyakta nidhananyeva, or bhutva bhutva praliyate. The universe manifests, becomes unmanifest. So that is something which the Bhagavad Gita talks about, the Vedic texts talk about. But the understanding is that the universe exists, it manifests, it unmanifests, manifests, unmanifests. However, beyond this is God. So we can have a cyclic universe. That's okay enough, but cyclic universe still requires a source beyond the cyclicity. So it still requires a source beyond the cyclicity. And therefore, the very argument which is being used to say that the universe does not have a creator actually ends up proving that there is a creator. So that brings, so say the alternative, there is no other alternative. Ultimately, we have to come to a point the universe has a source, and that source exists beyond the cyclicity of the universe. So in one sense, what is happening is the alternatives that are being proposed, they end up actually pointing or reinforcing the very definition that religion starts with, the cause of all causes. So a circle requires a starter beyond this, a drawer of the circle beyond the circle, outside the circle. Similarly, this very example of alternating universe, Big Bang, Big Crunch, Big Bang, Bunch, that points to something beyond the universe. Now, there's one more alternative. So none of these alternatives work. I'll talk now. We could go into specifics. There are many theories that have come up, but the theories fall in these broad principles. So the last one is the idea of the eternal universe. So this was also within the Indian tradition, not the Vedic tradition. This was also the theory of one of the prominent theories of Buddhism. Buddhism holds that the universe itself is eternal, and therefore it does not require any Ishvara, any God. And this was also proposed by science. If you consider history of science, in the origin of universe, there were broadly two theories: the steady state theory and eventually the Big Bang theory, and it had its many variants thereafter. So initially, most atheists, they preferred the steady state theory, because a steady state theory means the universe always existed. And because the universe existed all the time, therefore there is no need for the universe to have any source. But scientific evidence itself has countered the steady state theory. And although now we consider the Big Bang theory to be atheistic, but actually the Big Bang theory was what was vehemently opposed by atheists initially. And that's why as devotees, we don't have to take issues with specific theories. Rather than getting caught in specific theories, we focus on the principles underlying the theories. So because initially what atheists thought is, this was like the favorite of atheists. Because if the universe didn't have a beginning, then there's no need for a beginner, then there's no need for a God. And when the evidence came up, now there are multiple evidences that from logic perspective itself, even science recognizes as matter is temporary. Matter is, there is creation. In science, there's deterioration and there's destruction. Now, of course, deterioration leads to destruction, and destruction leads to creation in some other form. But nothing in the material existence is permanent. So the idea that the existence itself, material existence itself is permanent, that the universe is permanent, is eternal, this is this is itself questionable because this is universal feature of matter. So there may be huge Rocky Mountains, there may be huge Himalayan mountains, there may be giant galaxies and many things like that, but none of them are permanent. So there was a cosmic background noise which scientists detected. They said that there seems to be some radiation which is there in all directions of the universe. Normally radiation comes from a particular source. I'm putting very simply there. When they said this is from all directions, then only explanation they could give, if it doesn't have any source at all, it's not coming from any particular body, it must be coming from the past. So the cosmic background noise, as they called it, that comes from what they considered as the Big Bang, the start of the universe. So no particular source in any particular directions, everywhere it is there, like a background noise. They said this is the echo of the explosion at the start of the universe, and that's why that is there in all directions. Again, these are complex things. I'm putting them very simply for understanding. So the point of this is that no mainstream scientist, no major mainstream scientist consider the universe to be not having a beginning. Now, once they accepted that the universe has to have a beginning, then it led to a big problem. Okay, where does this all, what is the beginner? So what was the beginning? And that was the biggest problem. And that brings us to the last part of our discussion. L is logic. Now, in one sense, the whole discussion was based on logic. So why use logic as a separate point? Because here we are applying logic for a particular point. That when we see that the universe, as we observe it, is existing and that it had a source. But then the question comes up, what is the source of the universe? And from logic, again, basically we have three alternatives. One is that there is design, and the other is chance, and the other is, you could say, multiple universes, multiverse. So now atheists wanted to reject the idea of design and designer, because the universe as it exists, it is very complex, and not just the existence of the universe, the complexity of the universe, the coherence of the universe, the order of the universe. Where does it come from? So the question we are asking is order of the universe. So now we have moved forward from just the existence of the universe to the order of the universe that is there. Where does it come from? That's the question. So there could be three sources. It could be design, it could be chance, it could be multiverse. Now chance means, oh, it just happened. It's a lucky accident. Now, this is a common word. It was used by atheists at the time, lucky accident. Now, a lucky accident is an accident where maybe a car hits a tree, but it does not suffer much damage. A lucky accident doesn't mean that a car hits a tree and then a car transforms into a plane, or a sedan changes into a Mercedes. So they say, no, actually it's not chance, it's the laws of nature. Okay, that only raises the question, where did the laws of nature come from? Or they always existed. Really? But then they find that at the start of the universe does not seem to be operating according to the laws as we know it. But if the laws change, who changed the laws? So ultimately, if you don't accept design, we have to accept chance. And chance, this lucky accident, is a fallacy. There is too much order in the universe for it to have come by chance. The chance hypothesis, what it says is that if we consider this to be the universe, there are phenomena within the universe which are all logical. Why do objects fall from the sky? Because of gravity. Why does, how can we are able to transmit electricity? Oh, because of electromagnetics. So there are many things within the universe. If you consider the islands, there are islands of order. Hmm? But there is the ocean of chaos. That means, when an object falls from the sky, there is a law behind it. There is some order behind it. But the universe itself, how it came, there's no order to it. It's just completely inconsistent. And then so this chance as the explanation is not taken seriously by even serious philosophers who may be atheists. Say it's not sufficient explanation. And then the multiverse. A multiverse is the idea that there's so many different universes, and in one of the universes, everything that work out right. So it's like, if I toss 6, and when I toss if I toss a dice, then say it falls 6. And this toss dice, my life is at stake. In the Pandavas, when they had a gambling match, their kingdom was at stake, their family was at stake. But suppose my life is at stake. If the dice falls anything other than 6, I die. And it falls 6, hey, you're lucky. And suppose it falls 6 again, hey, you're really lucky, it's lucky. How long can you be so lucky? It goes 6, 6, 6, 6. 100 times it falls 6. And the participants start asking, hey, is this dice, does it have 6 on all sides? Or is it that somehow it's rigged so that when it falls, it rolls and it stops only when it's on the 6 at the top? Something is wrong, isn't it? If 100 times repeatedly it falls 6, so the question will be, is it rigged? As a natural question. So within the universe as it exists, there are hundreds of factors that need to work out right. Without that, we humans would not be able to exist. So the oxygen has to be in the right proportion. The Earth's temperature has to be right. The Earth's angular inclination has to be there. We can go into the specifics, but many of you have heard about this probably in your first class about design of the existence of God. But I'm talking about some bigger principle over here, not rehashing the evidence for the existence of God. Talking about a philosophical principle here, that when there are so many times that the exact needed result comes up, that raises the question, what's going on over here? How is this happening? So the explanation that they come up with is actually, millions of dice are being thrown, and they're all falling differently. By luck, this particular dice is always falling 6, 6, 6, 6. They say millions of universes are there, and in many of those universes, things are chaotic, things are disorderly. So disorderly life is not possible. So all that is happening is in this universe, it's right. So this particular idea of the multiverse is very different from the Vedic idea. The Vedic understanding is that there are many universes, but they are all orderly. The kind of order might be different in them. But the scientific idea of multiverse has come up primarily to evade the logical inference that the universe order came from a designer. And that's why the idea of multiverse. Okay, then how many multiverses are there? Well, the answer is as many as are needed for avoiding the conclusion that God exists. And the problem with this is the multiverse idea is unproven scientifically, and not only unproven, it is unprovable. So that means the whole foundational question is being answered in such a way by saying that, okay, this just doesn't work. So that means we have no evidence for this, but based on a theory for which we have no evidence, you have to accept the conclusion that there is no God. Well, why should we? Just apply the scientific method itself to science and ask for hard evidence. Then they may use some word jugglery and they may say, oh, this theory, that theory, this thing. So generally, whenever there's no answer to a question, the key resort is word jugglery. People may throw, okay, this theory, that theory, may throw big words. But okay, just forget the words. What is the implication of theory? What are the principles underlying it? So actually, from the logical perspective, the most reasonable explanation for the universe existence is that It came from a source with the potential to manifest everything that exists in the universe. And that source, the source with the potential to manifest everything, that is not a singularity, that is not a multiverse, potential to manifest everything, that source is what religions call as God. That is what is a clear definition of the divine as given in the Vedic scriptures. And that is what as the God that is being worshipped in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. Once we understand that everything is coming from God, everything is sustained by God. Iti matva bhajante mam. This can seem to be a very basic discussion, but it is said that if you understand aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate, what will happen by that is iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. So this philosophical understanding, philosophical comprehension will lead to devotional conviction, devotional wholeheartedness. That's what the first verse of the Chaturshloki Gita is saying. That those who understand that Krishna is the source of everything, iti matva bhajante mam, they will practice bhakti with their entire heart, with full conviction. That is the effect that we seek in our own lives and in the lives of those whom we are sharing spiritual wisdom with. So we discussed, to summarize, we discussed about the answer to the question, if God created everything, who created God? And I discussed it based on an acronym, D. D was start with definition, not depiction. The God is the cause of all causes. God is not just some image or depicted in a temple or a character talked about in a store, in a sacred book. God is by definition the cause of all causes. And every field discussion has to begin with axioms. So you cannot impose the axioms of geometry or algebra on geometry when we talk about line and point. So then start with definition, not depiction. Most people start with the culture of that is associated spirituality, that is religion. But we need to shift the discussion to the philosophy. So question the question, don't answer the question, don't try to answer the question. So to say that who created God, that's like asking who made a circle circular. Then E was example or exemplification. So we discussed how can there be something that is source of everything. So I talked about the Harry Potter novel and author of Harry Potter. The idea is that J.K. Rowling exists outside the storyline of Harry Potter. Similarly, God exists outside. God is the cause of all causes, includes time as a cause. So God exists outside the fabric of time and space. And then that brings us to the question, okay, but I don't accept this is just a definition by which you are avoiding explanation. No, it's not. But if you say it like that, what are the alternatives? So now we could say somebody can come up with infinite alternatives, but not really. There are only finite number of alternatives that can come up with. So first is that now everything came from nothing. So everything from nothing. Now that is scientifically inconsistent. That is no example. I discussed about it. There's no example at all of anything coming from nothing. So then nothing redefined, it is singularity. They call it nothing, but it's not nothing. So this is just deceptive word jugglery. Then after that, we discussed that everything from nothing and from everything from it's all it's eternal. So again, scientifically countered that the cosmic background noise, that everything. So now the question comes up that there are no alternatives. We have to have everything coming from something that has the potentiality to manifest everything. Now, what has the potentiality to manifest everything? So logical explanation for what could be the source that manifests everything. And in that, we discussed the three options broadly, that one could be chance. And the problem is there is too much coincidence, like 100 times the dice falling 6, with each time our life at stake. So chance is not a viable explanation, because there's too many things which are orderly, and all of them have to fall in place. In multiverse is the other explanation, but the problem with multiverse it is unproven and unprovable. So because the multiverse exists completely separate, so they talk about space-time wormholes and something like that in physics, in science fiction, to show that it's possible to go across, but there's nothing that has been proven. So why should we? Nothing that has been demonstrated, nothing that is accessible. So the last part was that therefore the most logical explanation is that the design, universe is all that is manifest is come by design, and that has come from a source with the potential to manifest everything, and that source is God. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for such a wonderful class, Prabhuji. It's like a mother feeding a baby, and baby should just eat her food, that's it. And it's so nicely explained everything in just simple examples. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for your very valuable time and putting so much effort and presenting us this sloka and explaining everything. Yeah.
Yes, happy to your service.
Yeah.
Yes, on the last two.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much. That's really very extremely intelligent analysis of the universe and its formation. It's just self-evident to me, Swata Praman, that there is a cause, Sarva Karana Karana, Anadir Adir Govindam, right? So even saying atheist to these people, or those who, I'm not like opposing them, but agnostic is a better word, right, Prabhuji? Agnostic, not atheist. But much better to for the scientist people, right? Those who oppose the presence or the cause, that there is no cause, nothing. That's agnostic, right?
Well, scientists, well, actually speaking, science would be functionally non-theistic. They're not atheistic, they're not theistic, they're non-theistic. So agnostics basically means that one who says that gnostios is to know. Agnostic means that whether God exists or doesn't exist can't be known. Now science, basically what is that? See, any event that happens, you can find explanations for it at multiple levels. So for example, Newton saw I mentioned this earlier also, say the apple fell. Newton saw the apple fall. And he wanted to know what caused the apple to fall. Now, you could say the ultimate explanation for everything is God. And Newton accepted the existence of God. But at that time, Newton was looking for a material explanation, the material mechanism. So and then he came up with the idea of gravity. So science, at least most of science, operates on what is called as methodological naturalism. As a methodology means the way it functions. Methodological naturalism means that it looks for natural explanations for natural phenomena. So a natural phenomena is an apple falling. And what would be a natural, you could say, now in our language, you could say it refers to material. So looking for material explanation of material phenomena. So science starts off as methodological, and that's perfectly fine. Ayurveda, for example, is also medical science. And Ayurveda also starts with methodological naturalism. That It is, say, if somebody's stomach is upset, it doesn't say that Vishnu is upset with you. That's why your stomach is upset. No, it looks for some material explanation. There's a kapha vata pitta imbalance in your body. So methodological naturalism as one way of looking at the world is perfectly fine. But over a period of time, science went from, or not science, some scientists went from methodological naturalism to metaphysical naturalism. That means methodological means as a matter of method, we will look for material explanations for material phenomena. Now, are there non-material explanations? There might be, but they are not our concern. So that's why I said science is functionally non-theistic. Within the scientific method, as it is practiced in mainstream, science is always looking for material explanations for material phenomena. Now, can science look for non-material or spiritual explanations? Yes, it can. But that's not the way science is primarily structured today. So since by definition itself, God is not a material being, so God is outside the scope of science. And that's why science, by its mainstream functional definition, is non-theistic. But science, when it goes from methodological naturalism to metaphysical naturalism, that is when it starts becoming atheistic. So are most scientists atheistic? No. Most scientists, they are using science as a tool for understanding things. And that way they are by definition non-theistic. So God is not considered within the scope of the scientist study of science. But there are some scientists, so when it becomes methodological naturalism, you can call it as scientism. It is scientism is what? It's the imperialism of science. Science is the only way to know everything, and whatever cannot be known by science does not exist. So scientism is not actually science. It is a misuse of science for particular agendas by particular people. So scientists are not atheists. Scientists are non-theists, functionally in their professional role while studying the universe. But within the study of science, certain evidence can point to the existence of God also. Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu, very much. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Sukkar Krishna Prabhu.
But I could not copy all. So will you be able to leave this, because some in the middle you scrolled it fast, the origin of universe, the study theory and state, that there I missed something, Prabhu. Okay. Because you have done so wonderfully, Prabhu. Really, only the scientists can be proved wrong if you go with this theory. They'll become devotees.
Okay, bro. So I will send this these notes to Shama Gauri Mataji, and she can send it to you if you want.
Okay, sure, bro. Please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Shama Kishori Devi.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji, for this amazing class. Very nicely analyzed. Prabhuji, my question is, in our Vedic understanding, we call universe as Brahmanda, and that has some meaning. But what does the word universe itself mean? It's like two words, uni and verse. So how does it relate to this? I mean, does it have any meaning?
Well, Brahmanda, it is translated as universe. Well, every language has its limitations. And that's why whenever any translation is done, in every translation, something from the original is missed out. So for example, you take the other way. In English, there's the word slim. Now, there is slim and there is thin. Now, if you consider Hindi, if you want to say somebody is slim, that slim indicates attractive. But thin often indicates the person is bony, their bones are still showing out. This is not so attractive. So is there any word exactly for both of these? Yes, in Hindi, you may say dubla patla. But dubla patla conveys more thin than slim. So now there are always, and I'm giving this as an example to illustrate that there'll always be non-translatable, not that the concept is not understandable, but there'll always be non-translatable words from one language to another. So we often, when we have to talk about concepts, we have to use the tools that are available for us in a particular language. So Brahmanda, when it's translated as universe, when universe is the normal word that was used to describe what existed. So originally universe meant all that existed. But now, whether it is science or science fiction, there are multiple universes. So universe, I would say it's an approximate translation. And if we consider the original meaning of the word universe, that is hardly understood or used now. So that means it's universes, the one thing that exists which unifies all of existence. So that is not the understanding of the universe right now. So it's not a precise translation. In Brahmanda, the idea is that two things which are talked about, that is, one is the shape of the universe is being pointed to, the source of the universe is being pointed to. So Anda points the shape, the Brahma points to the source. So now that kind of, the term is pregnant with meaning from the perspective of Vedic philosophy, Vedic cosmological origins. That is not the case with respect to universe. It comes from a different dynamic. But it's approximate translation, and we have to, in every language, we have to work with with whatever terms we have available.
Yeah. So Prabhuji, the uni in it, I mean, my understanding is uni means one. So it's not like a literal translation, like one and verse or whatever. So it's just a general, you're saying general approximate translation.
No, it's not a combination of uni plus verse like that.
Okay.
So it is uni, it is actually uni plus verses. Verses comes from vertere, and which means to turn back. It is like the one thing which is the source of everything.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Dandat Pranam.
Happy to your service.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, please go ahead with your question.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji. Prabhu, one question, not directly related to the content that you discussed in this class, Prabhu, but something indirectly related. Now, one of the things that is in contention when it comes to the faith in religion versus science is rebirth, right, Prabhu? So, taking the Bhagavad Gita 6th chapter verses 38, 41, and 42, if I have to look at my own life and pursuit in bhakti and some of my devotee friends, the pattern that is described in the Bhagavad Gita seem to be not going true in my case and in some of the cases that I am aware of. So I just wanted to hear from you, Prabhu, as to the pattern that we see when we practice bhakti, right? The outcome of it is the purification of consciousness is something that we are evidencing in this birth. But when we have to kind of relate those shlokas to our life, people who are not coming from religious backgrounds taking up seriously bhakti versus people who are coming from a conducive background not taking up bhakti at all. There are many cases, as we know, coming from religious backgrounds. So I just wanted to understand from you, Prabhu, as to how do we kind of see this mismatch of the pattern as the Lord describes in Bhagavad.
So you're saying, why do people from conducive background not take up bhakti versus people from non-conducive backgrounds take it up?
Yes, Prabhu, yes, Prabhu.
Well, we have to actually question what do we mean by conducive and non-conducive, because you might say that somebody had a devotional upbringing, but quite often that upbringing, they might have been exposed to bhakti, but was it a positive, pleasant exposure to bhakti? If it came as simply set of rules, don't eat this, don't watch this, don't do this, and that, and if rational explanations were not given, then sometimes a non-exposure to bhakti is better. So in India, in many ways, again, with all due respects, if you go to many places, the priests are so aggressively demanding money, money, money. And that gives a very negative impression of religion. So if somebody has had no such experience, maybe they are better put off, they are better positioned. So just devotionally conducive, we often equate devotionally conducive with, well, what all is devotionally conducive? There are many things you can look at in devotionally conducive. One is in terms of familiarity itself. The other, familiarity means you already know about it. Well, familiarity, is it good or is it bad? That has to be a question. That is not necessarily all familiarity is good or bad. Sometimes familiarity could be bad also. And another could be in terms of habits. A person doesn't have too many conditionings that can obstruct them in the practice of bhakti. But again, if they have good habits, that can make it easy to practice bhakti, but good habits can also make it that that they don't feel the need for bhakti. Somebody has bad habits, and sometimes that makes them call out to Krishna more, that makes them feel the need for Krishna more. So are bad habits necessarily bad? They can also be good. And are good habits necessarily good? Well, we don't know. Things are complex that way. Then if we say devotionally conducive, it means that if somebody has had positive impressions, positive experience, not just familiarity, not just in terms of personal habits, but as a positive experiences, then that's good. I would say that is conducive, but still they will have to explore. Most people want to explore life. This is what I found, this is what I grew up with, but what more is there in life to know? So I would say people from non-conducive backgrounds taking it up, it just depends on what is the, essentially there is the felt need and there is the ultimate need. The ultimate need for everyone is bhakti. And there is the felt need. What do I feel I need right now? And there has to be an intersection somewhere. So unless that intersection is established, that people don't take it up. So if in the felt need is only for, say, wealth or power or prosperity, and is not for spirituality, then people will not move forward. That's what happened in India. India was, when Srila Prabhupada was trying to do outreach, that the felt need was for political autonomy, the felt need was for economic prosperity, and the felt need was for, say, global influence. And that's why spirituality was not, it was not that it was not there within the culture, it was not a top priority in any way. So somewhere that is the expertise of those who are trying to share bhakti, to find the intersection between the felt need and the ultimate need. And sometimes the felt need is something which is felt by those who have had a conducive background, and sometimes it may be those who don't have a conducive background. But overall, it's definitely true that we as a movement have not really focused much energy on, say, trying to create adequate systems for giving opportunities for our children to practice bhakti. Now, according to religious sociology, any religion that has to survive, at least 75% of its participants, their next generation should be taking up their practice. I would say, if we consider, do we spend 75% of our energy on trying to create systems for our children? I would say not even 75%, may not even be 10%. So things are changing. In the first generation, it was just send children to Gurukuls and that will be taken care of. Now it's not like that. It's the individual parental responsibility. The communities are coming together to create schools and other forums, or some kind of Sunday schools. So I think things are moving forward. So, but essentially, the felt need and the ultimate need to intersect. And whether that will happen with a devotionally conducive environment or a devotionally non-conducive environment, that depends. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, Gail.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare
Yeah,
Krishna.
I came very late, so I might just need to listen to the recording. But I'm referring to your last slide where you're refuting various things as the cause for existence, like coincidence, and certain scientific things. And then the last thing you mentioned was God as the ultimate viable cause for existence. And I was just wondering how that was a viable cause, since we refuted things like scientific things and coincidences, things that are like cannot be proven, right? So God also seems to fall into that category of things that cannot be proven. So therefore, I'm wondering how you are making this claim that God is the only viable cause.
I didn't say anywhere that God was the only viable explanation. I said it was the most logical explanation among the alternatives. So that's why we explored the alternatives. And we said that from logical perspective, the science has different methods for proving different things. Now, proof comes from multiple sources. There's deductive. Deductive means we start from principles. So 3 plus 5 is equal to 8. So this is deduction. Now, very little of reality, deductive things work only in math. Most of science works on inductive. Inductive means what? This is deductive logic. You can use the word logic or deductive proof, whatever. Inductive logic is what? Or inductive methodology is what? That I prove this true. It's true first time, second time, third time, n times. And then I make an induction that it will be true for n plus 10 times also. And I throw an object up, it falls down. I throw another object up, it falls down. I throw object in London, in New York, in Delhi, in Beijing, in Bangkok, in Brisbane, it falls. So then I conclude that, yeah, it is true. So most of science, most of what we call as science, works on inductive logic, theory of gravity, the theory of theories about electromagnetics, electricity, and all those. They work on inductive logic, thermodynamics. But inductive logic, for it to be used, as a key requirement, that is repeatability. You should be able to do control experiments which are repeatable. But if we look at origins, there is no possibility for repeatability. We can't tell the universe, please recreate yourself so that we can observe and we can see how it happened. So for this, there is a third kind of logic, which is called as abductive logic. Now, abductive has nothing to do with abduction. What it means is, sometimes it's called as IBE, inference to the best explanation. Now, if you consider within science, deductive logic is considered to be the most authoritative. Inductive logic is considered second authoritative, and abductive is third level. So inference to best explanation means that if scientists want to know, okay, why are the land masses shaped in a particular way? Why is Africa shaped in a particular way? Why is Asia shaped in a particular way? There are theories like continental drift theories and others. But even if you accept those theories, it's not that we can get the continent to drift once again to observe, and we can do hundreds of experiments to prove it is right. No, we look at what evidence we have, what findings we can make, and from those findings, we try to infer how did this come about. So in this, there's never even according to standards of science itself, there's no conclusive proof. There's only reasonable proof. That's why inference to the best explanation, not necessarily the only explanation, not even the correct explanation. Based on the evidence that we have, based on the observational capacities that we have. So basically, this is especially the only way for non-repeatable events. Non-repeatable means you can more like humanly non-repeatable events. So for example, right now, this is the present. So here, okay, I have this evidence, this evidence, this evidence, this evidence. All these are things which I can observe right now in the present. Now I have to find out what would be the thing from the past. What was the state from the past by which all these things would come about? So what is the most reasonable explanation for all of these coming about? So now, is that the only explanation? Not necessarily. There could be some other explanation. But if this is how things are right now, what can we infer as the source for things coming out this way? So if we observe the complexity and the organization of the universe, chance is not a very viable explanation, and multiverse is also not a very viable explanation. Therefore, the most viable explanation among the alternatives is that there was an organizing principle. There was an organizing principle with the potentiality to manifest everything that exists, and that is God. Or that is rather that starting point with the potentiality to manifest everything, that is defined as God in the religious tradition, and God is the being who has all that potentiality. Does it answer your question?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you. Can you just quickly remind me deductive reasoning? I know you gave the example of math, but how is it deductive?
Sorry. Okay, that's a complicated subject.
Oh, okay.
Basically, what it means is, deductive logic is that this is the truth always. It has got nothing to do with the deduction as we use it. The way we use the word deduction is different from the way it is used in deductive logic. Just like we use abductive is different from abduction. Basically, what it means is, if there is a principle that is universally accepted, then from that, the answer becomes obvious. So 3 plus 5 is 8. That's just a mathematical principle. So now Einstein is said to have said, there are many quotes attributed to Einstein, not all of them are found in his written works. He's said to have said, to the extent a theory is mathematical, to that extent, or rather, the more a theory is mathematical, the less it actually describes reality. And the more a theory describes reality, the less it is mathematical. Because reality is much more complex than mathematics. Mathematics is definitely describes some part of reality, but it doesn't describe all part of reality. Okay? So reduction basically means there's a universally accepted principle, and we just apply this principle to get the result. It's a reduction from a universally accepted principle.
Okay, people. Thank you so much.
So thank you everyone for these thoughtful questions. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for your very valuable time and association to us this morning and enlightening us on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam. We hope to see you again very soon, Prabhuji. Let us offer our humble obeisances. Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagadguru ki jai.
Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki jai ho.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Jai Jai.